In chapters 2 through 5 of the SAW-based curriculum, students learn about each of the 4 Earth spheres: hydrosphere, geosphere, biosphere, and atmosphere. The goal of this second arts integration overlay is to give students a hands-on opportunity to work with objects from each of those spheres by creating a piece of land art. The hands-on experience with natural materials from the Earth spheres, combined with the opportunity to observe what the environment does to these materials over time, gives students a deeper understanding of the science concepts they are learning. As teachers, we understand the real-life constraints when it comes to this kind of project. So we have created a menu of options that you can pick and choose from depending on what works best for your students and your school. To prepare students to engage in this activity, we suggest using the Environmental Engineer Land Art Workbook. A PDF of both a teacher and student version is available in the module. You can choose to use the workbook in its entirety or use individual pages depending on your class. For this overlay, students will be physically creating a piece of land art and then returning to that land art to observe it over time. This activity may look very different depending on the constraints of your individual school. With that in mind, here are a few options to think about before beginning. First, students can make their land art individually, in groups, or as a class. The important part of this activity is that students get to observe the land art over time. So while giving them the chance to make their own is a great way to do it, making one as a class is another option that may be better for you or your students. Secondly, students will need materials such as stones, rocks, leaves, flowers, seed pods, bark, plants, mud, or any other natural materials to make their land art. Materials could be gathered at school, brought from home, collected from students' neighborhoods, or provided by the teacher. Finally, students will need to return several times to observe and record their observations, so land art sites should be somewhat easily accessible. When selecting sites for their land art, students should be given areas to work in that are convenient for accessing within the time period of the class. These sites can vary depending on the school. It could be interesting for students to compare what happens to land art built in areas with more human traffic as opposed to land art built in less trafficked areas. To begin the process of making land art, students will be using a variety of natural materials. Page 5 of the Environmental Engineer Land Art Workbook gives students a space to observe and reflect on the materials they're using. Allowing students time to draw or write about their selected materials is an important part of both making artistic decisions, as well as giving students the opportunity to connect the materials they're using with the different Earth spheres that they are learning about. After selecting materials, students will pick an outdoor space to create their land art in. Land artists often spend time in a space thinking about the unique characteristics of a landscape. If you have time, you can show students examples from the land art slideshow provided below and ask them to think about why the artist may have chosen that place for their land art and how their land art fits into that space. Page 6 of the workbook gives students a place to draw or write about the place that they have chosen for their land art. Once they select the space, students will use the materials they have selected to make their land art installations. There's no right or wrong way to make land art. Students can use all or some of the materials and lay them out however they choose. The most important part is that when they are finished making their land art, students need to leave it alone. This may be hard for some students who will worry about their land art getting messed up. You can remind them that land art is something that is meant to change and that a big part of this activity is for them to be able to observe those changes. You can also photograph or have students draw their land art after they create it on page 7 of the workbook. After making their land art, students should return to their land art site at least one time to make observations about the changes that are happening. Pages 8, 9, and 12 in the workbook can be used for students to record their observations. Also included in the workbook are several pages that can be used as students learn about each of the 4 spheres. Each page gives students a space to reflect on that sphere and make a connection between what they are learning about that sphere and how that sphere is being used in their land art. Page 13 in the workbook gives students a visual of the Earth spheres to help them on their reflection pages. These pages can also be used as a way to help teachers assess students' understanding. Thanks for joining me for this arts integration demonstration. I'll see you in the next video.